the world is still dark. It is that profound, heavy darkness that exists only before the invention of streetlights. A darkness that feels like a physical weight pressing against the thatched roof above your head. You are awake, though you have not yet opened your eyes. You know you are awake because the rhythm of the room has changed. The silence of the deep night has given way to the subtle, shifting sounds of the hour before dawn. You are warm. It is a specific kind of warm-thumbed animal, and enclosed. You are lying on a mattress of hessian, stuffed with straw. The prickle of the dried stalks felt even through the thick coarse weave of the fabric. Over you lies a heavy woolen blanket woven here in the village, likely by your own family's hands during the long winter evenings of last year. It smells of lanolin and wood smoke. Everything here smells of wood smoke. It is the perfume of your life, the scent that seeps into your skin, your hair, and the very timber of the walls that surround you. You shift your weight, and the straw beneath you rustles loud in the quiet. The air outside the blanket is cold. You can feel it on the tip of your nose and your forehead. It is winter, perhaps late January or early February, in the year of our Lord 1290. The precise date matters less too. You than the position of the sun and the ringing of the church bells, but the season dictates everything. You take a deep breath. The air inside the cottage is thick, but not unpleasant. It is a mixture of cured smoke, dried herbs hanging from the rafter sage, dried onions, perhaps a bundle of meadowsweet, and the earthy, pungent scent of the animals. They are close. You can hear the rhythmic, wet sound of the ox chewing its cud on the other side of the low wooden partition. The animals live here with you. It is a necessity of survival. Your body heat, rising and trapping itself under the low eaves, is the reason you did not freeze during the night. The ox, the cow, perhaps a few chickens roosting in a basket, they are your radiators, living furnaces that turn fodder into warmth. You open your eyes. There is no light, save for a faint, dull red glow in the center of the room. This is the heart of the house, the hearth. Slowly, you push the heavy wool blanket down. The cold air bites at your neck and shoulders, urging you to move. You swing your legs over the side of the bed frame, a simple box raised off the ground to keep away from the damp. In the draft sand, your bare feet find the floor. It is beaten earth. Not just dirt, but a floor that has been packed down over generations, mixed with ox blood and lime to create a surface almost as hard as stone, yet warmer to the touch. Scattered across it are dried rushes, changed out perhaps twice a year. They crackle softly under your weight. You move through the darkness by memory. Your universe is small. This cottage, measuring perhaps 30 feet by 15, is divided into 2 bays. You navigate around the central post, a great rough-hewn oak trunk that anchors the cruck frame of the house. You can feel the grain of the wood as your hand brushes it solid, immovable, ancient. You kneel before the hearth. It is not a fireplace against a wall, as will be common in the stone manor houses of the wealthy centuries from now. This is a central open hearth, a square of stones set into the middle of the floor. Above it there is no chimney. There is only a hole in the roof, and the smoke must find its own way up. Meandering through the rafters, coating the timbers in black soot, which hardens the wood and prevents rot, and suffocating any insects that might try to nest in the thatch. Last night, before you slept, you performed the curfew, coverfew, or cover fire. You banked the fire, raking the ashes over the burning coals, to starve them of oxygen, just enough to keep them smoldering without burning out. To lose the fire means the tedious knuckle-scraping task of striking flint and steel against tinder, or the humbling walk to a neighbor's house to borrow a burning brand. You reach for the iron poker, its handle cold and rough. Gently, carefully, you scrape back the gray, powdery ash. It drifts up in a small cloud, smelling of oak and peat. Beneath the gray blanket, you find them, 3 distinct glowing eyes of deep orange. The seed fire. You lean forward, your face close to the warmth. You take a breath and blow gently. The orange glow brightens, pulsing with your breath. You reach for the small stack of kindling you prepared last night, wigs of hazel and dry birch bark. You place a piece of bark directly onto the coals and blow again. Thin ribbon of smoke curls up, stinging your eyes, but you do not blink. You watch as the edge of the bark curls, blackens, and then with a soft fet sound, catches a yellow flame. The light blooms. Suddenly, the room is brought into existence. The flickering yellow light reveals the walls of your home. They are wattle and daub-woven panels of hazelwood plastered over with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung, whitewashed on the inside to reflect the meager light. The walls are thick, excellent insulators against the English winter. When the light catches the texture of the daub, the sweep of the trowel marks left by your father or grandfather. You feed small sticks into the growing flame, building a lattice structure to allow the air to flow. The crackle of the wood is the first loud noise of the day. The fire is hungry. Once the kindling is established, you add a larger log, a piece of seasoned beech. The smoke rises straight up in the still air, a gray pillar ascending into the black void of the rafters, where the roof disappears into shadow. Now that the fire is alive, you can attend to yourself. You stand in the heat, warming your shins. You are wearing your linen shirt and Bry's loose-fitting undergarments that you sleep in. They are soft from years of washing and wearing, though the linen is turning a grayish white with age. You reach for your tunic, hanging on a wooden peg driven into the wall frame. The tunic is wool, dyed a russet brown using madder root or perhaps walnut shells. It is the color of the earth. You pull it over your head. The wool is scratchy against your neck, but it is heavy and warm. It falls to your knees. Next, you find your hose epaulet legs of wool cut on the bias to provide a little stretch. You pull them up your legs and tie them to the belt of your breeches with small cords. Finally, you wrap your feet. You do not always wear shoes inside, but the floor is cold this morning. You wrap strips of wool around your ankles and slide your feet into low leather turn shoes. Simple footwear made inside out and then turned right side out. The soles thin and flexible. You are dressed. You are warm. You are alive. You turn your attention to the other inhabitants of the room, stepping over the low wooden barrier that divides the living space from the byre. You enter the animal end of the longhouse. The smell here is stronger ammonia and wet fur, but to you it smells like wealth. The family cow turns her large head to look at you, her eyes reflecting the firelight from the other room. You run your hand along her flank. She is warm. You check the manger. Still has a little hay left from the night, but she will need more soon. The ox is lying down, a massive dark mound in the shadows. These animals are your tractor, your milk supply, your insurance against starvation. Their health is as important as your own. You murmur a few words to them, low soothing sounds. They know your voice. You return to the main room. The fire is crackling steadily now, casting dancing shadows against the walls. It is time to think of water. You pick up a yoke, from the corner a carved piece of wood, that fits over your shoulders and to wooden buckets. The buckets are made of staves bound with hazel hoops, heavy even when empty. You move to the door. It is a heavy construction of oak planks, held together with iron nails, swinging on iron strap hinges. It is barred from the inside with a thick beam of wood. You lift the bar and pull the door open. The morning hits you. It is gray outside, a monochromatic world of mist and frost. The sun has not yet broken the horizon, but the sky to the east is the color of bruised iron. The ground in front of your cottage is frozen hard. The mud, usually a churning mess from the passage of feet and hooves, is solidified into jagged ridges that are treacherous to walk on. You step out. The cold is sharp, immediate, and clarifying. It wakes you more effectively than the fire did. You can see your breath puffing out in white clouds that vanish instantly in the wind. The village is quiet. You can see the dark shapes of other cottages, low humps in the landscape, smoke already rising from their roof vents, joining the mist. You walk to the well. It is located in the center of the village green, a shared resource. Duh! The grass on the green is stiff with frost, crunching loudly under your leather soles. You are not the first one up. You see footprints in the frost, dark depressions where the ice crystals have been crushed. At the well, you hook your bucket to the rope. The windlass creaks a high, lonely sound in the quiet morning. You lower the bucket into the dark. You count the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Splash. You let it sink, then begin to wind it back up. The wet rope is rough and biting cold on your hands. Water splashes over the rim as the bucket emerges, dark and clear. You fill your 2 carrying buckets, the water steaming slightly in the freezing air. The walk back is harder. The weight pulls at your shoulders, the yoke digging in. You have to walk with a gliding step to keep the water from sloshing over your boots. Your rhythm is steady. Step, slide, step, slide. This is a chore you have done thousands of times. Your body knows the balance point perfectly. Back inside the cottage, you kick the door shut behind you and slide the bar back into place. The warmth of the room embraces you again, the air instantly humid compared to the dry chill outside. You pour some of the water into an iron pot that hangs from a chain over the fire. This is your kettle, your saucepan, your oven. You look around the room. The light is growing stronger now, filtering in through the small window opening. There is no glasses for cathedrals and kings. The window is simply a square hole in the wall, covered by a wooden shutter. You unlatch the shutter and push it open to let in the day. The light that enters is gray and watery, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the heat rising from the fire. It is time for the first meal. You do not have a breakfast in the modern sense of sitting down to a complex spread. You have the remains of yesterday's pottage. Pottage is the constant companion of your life. It is a stew, a soup, a porridge. It is whatever is in the pot. It sits on the hearth day and night, constantly replenished, constantly simmering. You take a wooden ladle and stir the thick brown mixture. It consists of oats, field peas, perhaps some onions, herbs, and a little bit of bacon fat if you are lucky. It is thickened overnight into a gelatinous mass. You add a splash of the fresh water to loosen it, stirring it as it heats. The smell changes as it warms, becoming savory and comforting. You take a wooden bowl from the shelf, a simple lathe-turned vessel made of maple land, scoop a portion for yourself. You grab a chunk of bread from a linen-wrapped bundle. The bread is masculina, a mixture of rye and wheat flour. It is dense, dark, and hard. You use the bread as a spoon, scooping up the hot pottage. The food is warm in your belly. It is fuel. As you eat, you stare into the fire, planning the day. The seasons dictate the labor. It is late winter. The plowing has not yet fully begun for the spring sowing, but there is always work. The drainage ditches in the Lord's field need clearing. The hedges need pleaching. There is wood to be chopped. You finish the pottage and wipe the bowl clean with the last crust of bread. You do not wash the bowl with soap and water. You wipe it out and place it back on the shelf. You stand and move to the corner of the room where your tools are kept. You pick up a billhook, a curved iron blade mounted on a short wooden handle. It is heavy, the metal pitted, but the edge filed sharp. You run your thumb carefully along the flat of the blade, checking for nicks. You sit on a three-legged stool near the fire and pick up a whetstone. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The rhythmic sound of stone on metal fills the quiet room. This is the meditative maintenance of your livelihood. The tool is dull, the work is twice as hard. You take your time. You watch the sparks of flint and steel in the fire. You listen to the ox shifting its weight. You feel the rough texture of the whetstone. Your wife stirs in the bed. The children, two of them, sharing a smaller pallet near the wall, are still asleep, buried under sheepskins. You will let them sleep a little longer. The sun is only just cresting the trees now. You check your boots again. You tighten the wool wrappings. You stand up, sliding the billhook into your belt. You wrap a heavy cloak around your shoulders, a garment of thick felted wool that is almost waterproof. You pull the hood up. You walk to the door again. You pause, looking back at the fire. It is burning steadily now, a confident flame that will keep your family warm while you are out in the wind. You check the position of the logs, ensuring none will roll out onto the rushes. You open the door. The village is awake now. You hear the bark of a dog, the distant lowing of cattle being driven to the common pasture, the sound of a cart creaking on the frozen ruts. You step out, closing the door firmly behind you. The day's labor begins not with a shout, but with the quiet, persistent trudge of boots on frozen earth. You walk towards the edge of the village, towards the coppiest woods that line the stream. The walk from your cottage to the edge of the village is a journey through a landscape written by history. As your boots crunch over the frozen ruts of the lane, you pass the boundaries of your neighbors' lives. The village is laid out in a series of long, narrow strips of land known as tofts and crofts. The house sits on the toft, facing the muddy track that serves as the main street, while the croft stretches out behind it a long, thin garden where kale leaks and perhaps a few gnarled apple trees grow. You pass the house of Miller John. The wheel of his mill is silent now, the stream likely choked with ice, but you can smell the faint, ghostly dust of flour that seems to cling to his thatch even in winter. You pass the priest's house, slightly larger, slightly better maintained, with a stone chimney instead of a hole in the roof, a marker of status and comfort. Leaving the cluster of houses, you enter the open fields. This is the engine of your world. In the gray morning light, the land looks like a frozen sea. The ridge and furrow, system created by the turning of the heavy moldboard plow year after year, has shaped the earth into long, undulating waves. The ridges are high and dry where the crops will be planted. The furrows are low and deep, acting as drainage ditches. Walking across them is a rhythmic exercise. Up the slope, down the slope, up the slope. Your legs know this terrain better than they know the floor of your own home. To your left lies the fallow field, resting this year to recover its strength. To your right is the field sown with winter wheat, the green shoots barely visible, dormant under the frost. You are heading towards the woodland edge, the boundary between the cultivated and the wild. The woods you are entering are not wild, however. They are as carefully managed as the fields. This is the Lord's copies. You have rights here, specific, limited, and fiercely guarded rights. You're allowed hedge-boat wood for repairing fences and fireboat wood for fuel, but you must take only what is permitted. To take a standard, full-grown oak or ash tree meant for timber would be a crime punishable by a heavy fine in the manor court or worse. You step into the shelter of the trees. The wind dies down immediately, blocked by the density of the growth. It is quieter here, the silence dampened by the carpet of rotting leaves and moss. The air smells different, sharper, green, smelling of damp bark and sleeping sap. You stop at a hazel stool. This is your task for the morning. A stool is the base of a tree that has been cut down to the ground previously. Because hazel is vigorous, it does not die when cut. Instead, it shoots up a spray of new, straight poles from the base. This stool is old, perhaps 50 or 60 years old, far older than you. It is a wide, knobby, moss-covered lump of wood the size of a small table, anchored into the earth by roots deep enough to drink the groundwater. Growing from it are a dozen straight poles, each about the thickness of your wrist, reaching up 15 feet towards the canopy. They were last cut 7 years ago. You know this because you were the one who cut them. You remember the winter? It was the year the old ox died. Now the poles are ready again. This is the cycle of copying, a sustainable harvest that allows the wood to regenerate endlessly. You unhook the billhook from your belt. The handle is polished smooth by your grip, the wood dark with the oils of your skin. You spit on your palm to get a better purchase. The iron is cold, a dead weight in your hand, but it balances perfectly. You step close to the stool. You must choose your cut carefully. Do not hack mindlessly. You select a pole on the outer edge. You crouch, your knees popping slightly in the cold. You angle the billhook. The cut must be clean, and it must be angled upwards. If you cut flat, rainwater will sit on the stump and rot the wood. If you cut downwards, you might split the stool. You swing. Thwack. The sound is dull and solid. The blade bites deep into the green wood. The shock travels up your arm, jarring your shoulder, but it is a familiar sensation. You pull the blade free. The wood inside is creamy white, startlingly bright against the dark bark. A second swing, intersecting the first. The chip flies out, spinning into the leaf litter. A third swing, and the pole groans, leans, and topples. You do not stop. You work with a rhythm that is almost a trance. Swing, cut, swing, cut. The pile of poles grows. Your breath comes in rhythmic puffs of steam. The cold that was biting at your fingers and toes begins to recede, replaced by the internal heat of labor. You can feel the sweat starting to prickle under your wool tunic. Once you have harvested the poles from this stool, leaving the base clean and white-scarred to grow again next spring, you switch tasks. Now, you must process the wood. You pick up one of the long hazel poles. It is flexible, strong, and relatively straight. With the billhook, you deftly strip the side branches, the snedding. You run the hook up the length of the pole, slicing off the twigs with quick flicking motions. These small twigs are not waste, they are kindling. You kick them into a separate pile. The main poles will be used for hurdles woven fence panels to pen the sheep. Or perhaps they will be used to repair the wattle walls of the barn. Hazel is the plastic of your century. Bendable, durable, and abundant. But today your primary goal is firewood. You take the smaller branches and the tops of the poles, you gather them into a bundle. You're making a faggot. This is a specific unit of measurement in your life. A faggot must be of a certain size, usually 3 feet long and 2 feet in circumference. If it is too small, the Lord's bailiff will cheat you on your tally. If it is too big, you are cheating yourself of effort. You take a withe, a thin, flexible willow or hazel shoot. You twist it in your hands, breaking the fibers just enough to make it pliable like rope, but not enough to snap it. Or wrap the withe around the bundle of sticks. You place your boot on the bundle to compress it, hauling tight on the withe until it bites into the bark. You twist the ends together in a specific knot, tucking the tail under the band. The tension holds it fast. You stand up and stretch. Your back cracks. You look at your work. 3 neat faggots of firewood and a stack of clean hazel poles. It is good work. It is tangible. The sun has climbed higher now. The light filtering through the bare branches of the oak standards above you is pale yellow. A robin lands on the handle of your billhook, which you have stuck upright in the ground. It watches you with a black, beady eye, waiting for you to turn over a leaf and reveal a worm. You stay still for a moment, watching the bird. It is a moment of connection with the living world that surrounds you. You reach into your pouch and pull out a small leather flask. It contains small beer. A weak, cloudy brew, made from the 2nd or 3rd running of the grain. It has very little alcohol, just enough to kill the bacteria, and it is thick with calories. You take a swig. It is cool and sour, tasting of yeast and grain. It coats your throat and settles the dust. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. The silence of the woods is broken by a sound in the distance, the chop of another axe. It is likely Thomas, your neighbor. He is working the next section of coppice over. You do not call out. You do not need to. The sound of his work is greeting enough. It tells you that you are not alone, that the village is functioning, that the community is at work. You turn back to the hazel stool. You have cleared the wood, but you are not done. You must tidy the site. You rake the leaves back over the disturbed earth with your boot. You ensure that no jagged splinters are left on the stool that might catch the frost and split the wood. You are a gardener, and this forest is your garden. As you prepare to lift the wood, you pause to look at the standards, the great oak trees that tower over the hazel. These trees belong to the lord of the manor entirely. They are destined for great things. The beams of a cathedral, the hull of a ship, the frame of a great hall. They will outlive you. You touch the bark of the nearest oak. It is rough, deeply fissured, like a map of a mountainous land. You feel a strange sense of kinship and resentment. You are both rooted to this land. You, by the laws of serfdom. The tree, by its biology. Neither of you can leave. But there is a comfort in that limitation. You know your place. You know your purpose. You do not suffer from the anxiety of infinite choice that will plague your descendants. Your life is a straight furrow, a clearly cut path. You heft the faggots onto your shoulder. They are heavy, the green wood full of water weight. The rough bark digs into your tunic, but the calluses on your shoulder protect you. You grab the bundle of poles in your other hand. You turn and begin the walk back out of the woods. The return journey is always harder. The ground seems uneven, the gravity of the earth pulling at your burden. But as you emerge from the tree line, the sun hits your face. It is brighter now. The frost on the fields is beginning to melt, turning the tips of the grass blades into glistening jewels. You see smoke rising from your cottage chimney in the distance. Your wife will have stoked the fire. She will be churning butter or spinning wool. The children will be awake, perhaps feeding the chickens. You are bringing fuel, or bringing the means to cook the midday meal, the means to keep the dark and the cold at bay. You walk with a steady, plodding gait. You are a small figure in a vast landscape, a speck of brown wool against the green and gray of the English countryside. But you are essential. Without you, the land does not produce. Without you, the Lord does not eat. You are the foundation of the kingdom. As you near the village, you see the bailiff riding his horse along the boundary track. He is a stern man, dressed in better wool, with leather boots that go to his knees. He holds a tally stick. He watches you as you pass. You nod. Your head a small, necessary gesture of deference. He nods back, barely. He notes your load. He knows you are working. That is all that matters. You reach your toft. You drop the wood near the woodpile by the door. The sound of the faggots hitting the ground is the punctuation mark of your morning. You brush the bark dust from your tunic. Your hands are stiff, claw-like from gripping the wood. You flex them, feeling the blood rush back into your fingertips. You open the door to your cottage. The warmth rushes out to meet you again, but this time it smells different. It smells of baking bread. The day has moved on. The morning chore is done. The door latch is shut, cutting off the cold wind with a finality that sends a shiver through the timber frame of the house. You stand for a moment in the entryway, the transition from the bright, sharp winter light to the amber gloom of the interior momentarily blinding you. Your eyes adjust slowly. The world contracts from the expansive, frozen fields to this intimate, smoky square of warmth. The cottage is no longer silent. The morning stillness you woke to has been replaced by the hum of industry. This is the domain of your wife. While you have been harvesting the raw materials of heat from the woods, she has been manufacturing the sustenance of life. The air is heavy, suspended with a new scent that overrides the wood smoke and the livestock. It is the smell of yeast, of fermentation, of grain transforming into flesh. It is the smell of bread. You move towards the hearth, unfastening your heavy cloak. The heat hits you like a physical wave. Your wife is kneeling by the fire, her back to you, her hair covered by a white linen coif. She is tending to the baking kettle, an inverted earthenware pot placed directly onto the hot stones of the hearth. She is piling hot ash and embers around the sides and over the top of the pot. It is a primitive oven, a kill of clay and fire, but it is effective. Inside that dark, hot space, a loaf is rising, the crust hardening, the crumbs setting. She hears your step and turns. Her face is flushed from the heat of the fire, her sleeves rolled up to her elbows, revealing forearms dusted with flour. There is no elaborate greeting. In a life lived shoulder to shoulder, words are often spent like coins carefully, and only when necessary. A nod suffices. She sees the wood you have brought. You see the bread she is baking. It is a fair exchange. You sit on the bench near the wall, leaning back against the wattle. You watch her work. It is hypnotic. She is not just baking. She is managing a complex chemistry with no clock and no thermometer. She judges the heat by the glow of the embers and the feeling on her cheek. She judges the time by the rhythm of her other chores. To her left sits the butter churn. It is a tall, coopered vessel made of oak staves, bound with iron. Next to it stands a bucket of cream. Saved from the cow's milk over the last few days, it has been allowed to ripen, to sour slightly. This is not the sweet cream of the modern age. It is a living culture, thick and yellow. She moves from the fire to the churn. She takes the plunger, a long wooden pole with a perforated cross at the bottom end, begins to work. Splosh, thud, splosh. The sound is the heartbeat of the kitchen. It is a wet, heavy rhythm. The cream resists. It is heavy work, demanding endurance in the shoulders and lower back. She does not rush. To rush is to ruin the grain of the butter. She works with a steady metronomic cadence. Up, down, up, down. You find yourself lulled by the sound. The tension of the woods, the alertness required to swing a billhook drains away. Here, the labor is domestic, contained, safe. Your children are here too. They are small shadows in the periphery. Your daughter, perhaps 6 years old, is sitting on a rush mat, her small fingers busy. She is shelling dried field beans from their pods. Snap, rattle, snap, rattle. The dry beans fall into a wooden bowl. She is contributing. In this house, there are no passengers. Even the smallest hands must learn the texture of work. The time approaches for dinner. In your world, dinner is the midday meal, the anchor of the day. It is eaten when the sun is at its highest, when the labor of the morning is done, and the labor of the afternoon has not yet begun. Your wife stops churning. The sound of the sploshing ceases, leaving a ringing silence. She checks the churn. The sound had changed subtly from a liquid slosh to a solid thud. The butter has come. The fat globules have collided and stuck together, separating from the buttermilk. She will press and salt it later. For now, food takes precedence. She moves to the hearth and uses a pair of iron tongs to carefully pull the embers away from the baking pot. She taps the pot with the poker. It rings with a dull sound. She uses a thick cloth to lift the hot clay dome. Cloud of steam escapes, smelling of toasted nuts and sour earth. There, sitting on the hot stone, is the loaf. It is round, somewhat flat, dark brown, and dusted with ash. It is a Maslin loaf. made from a mixture of rye and wheat grown in your own strip of the field. It is dense, heavy bread, fuel for heavy labor. She lifts it out and sets it on the table to cool. The crust crackles as it contracts in the cooler air. You move to the table. It is a trestle, tabala, simple board of elm laid across two sawhorses. When not in use, it is dismantled and leaned against the wall to make space. Now, it is the center of the family. You sit on the bench. There are no chairs. Chairs are for bishops and lords. You have a bench, polished smooth by the wool of your breeches. The meal is simple, yet to you, it is a feast of security. She ladles pottage from the cauldron that hangs permanently over the fire. The pottage today is green and thick. It is made of dried peas that have been simmered until they have dissolved into a paste, flavored with onions, garlic, and wild herbs gathered from the hedgerows. Mustard, garlic, nettles, sorrel. There is a shine of fat on the surface, rendered from a piece of salt pork. You take your knife from your belt. It's your personal tool, used for cutting wood, killing chickens, and eating your dinner. You wipe the blade on your thigh. Your wife places the bread on the table. She cuts it into thick wedges. The knife saws through the hard crust, revealing the dense gray-brown interior. She hands you a piece. It is still warm. You hold it for a moment, feeling the heat seep into your calloused palm. You dip the bread into the pottage. The dry rice sponge soaks up the savory, pea-flavored liquid. You eat. The taste is earthy, salty, and profound. The rye has a sour temps. The peas are sweet and mealy. It requires chewing. This is not food that melts in the mouth. It is food that demands effort. Food that reminds you of the soil it came from. You chew slowly, your jaw working the dense fibers. There is cheese, too. Wedge of green cheese, which simply means it is new, fresh, soft, and white, not aged. A taste of fresh milk and salt. It is mild and creamy, balancing the coarseness of the bread. And there is ale. Your wife pours it from a leather jug into a shared wooden cup. This is not the small beer of the morning. It's a stronger brewed last month. It is dark, thick, and unhopped. Without hops to preserve it and make it bitter, the ale is sweet, flavored with gruta, mixture of mugwort, yarrow, and heather. It is nutritious, full of B vitamins from the yeast. Take a long draught. The sweetness cuts the salt of the pork. You pass the cup to your wife. She drinks and wipes her mouth with her apron. The meal is quiet. You do not discuss politics. The king is a distant rumor, a face on a silver penny you rarely see. You do not discuss the news of the world. The world ends at the horizon of the parish boundary. You discuss the immediate. The black hen is laying again, she says softy. The hazel is cutting well, you reply. Sap is down. We will need more salt soon. These are the headlines of your existence. As you finish the meal, you do not immediately rush back out. The digestion of such heavy food requires a moment of stillness. The fire crackles. The ox in the byre stamps a hoof. The room is warm, filled with the collective body heat of the family and the animals. This is the cozy of your life. Not a luxury of soft cushions, but the primal comfort of being full, warm, and dry when the world outside is hungry, cold, and wet. But the day does not pause. The concept of leisure is foreign. There is only work and rest from work. Your wife clears the table. She does not wash the dishes in a sink. She wipes the wooden bowls with a crust of bread, eating the last of the gravy, then scours them with a handful of dry rushes or sand if they are greasy. Water is too precious to waste on dishes. It must be hauled from the well. She returns to her station by the fire, but now her task changes. The butter is made, the bread is baked. Now she spins. She picks up her distaff stick, holding a cloud of carded wool. It is wool from your own sheep, sheared last summer, washed in the stream, and combed with iron teasels until the fibers were aligned. She tucks the distaff under her arm. In her right hand, she holds the drop spindle, a wooden shaft with a weighted whirl of clay at the bottom. She teases a strand of wool from the distaff, twists it with her fingers, and hooks it to the spindle. Flick. She gives the spindle a sharp twist, drops towards the floor, spinning rapidly like a top. As it spins, it catches the fibers, twisting them tightly together, transforming the fluff into strong, thin yarn. Whir, the spindle hums. She watches it, feeding the wool with her fingers, controlling the thickness of the thread by touch. When the spindle reaches the floor, she catches it, winds the new yarn onto the shaft, and starts again. Tease, flick, spin, wind. This is the soundtrack of the Middle Ages. In every house, in every village, in every castle, there is a woman spinning. It is the constant, unending labor required to clothe humanity. It takes miles of thread to weave a single tunic. It takes weeks of spinning to make enough thread for that tunic. She spins while she watches the pot. She spins while she talks. She spins while she waits. You watch the thread form? It is a minor miracle of friction and physics, though that thin, gray thread will become the warp and weft of your winter cloak next year. You stand up. The heaviness of the meal is settling in your stomach, but the light is shifting. The sun is past its zenith, so the afternoon is short in winter. You cannot stay by the fire, hypnotic as it is. Have indoor work to do as well. You cannot go back to the woods. The light will fail too soon. But the harness of the ox needs mending. You go to the corner and retrieve the leather collar. It is old, the leather cracked and polished by the ox's sweat. The stitching has given way near the shoulder. You sit back down on your stool, but this time closer to the window, chasing the fading light. You take an ala sharp metal spike and a needle threaded with waxed linen cord. You position the leather. It is tough. You have to push the awl through with the palm of your hand, grunting with the effort. Punch. Then you thread the needle. Pull. You work in companionable silence with your wife. The whir of the spindle and the scratch of the awl. The children are playing a game now, drawing lines in the ashes of the hearth with a stick, a quiet game of territories. The atmosphere is thick, dusty, and calm. The smoke from the fire drifts up into the rafters, forming a blue haze that hangs over your heads. It stings your eyes slightly, but you are used to it. You have breathed smoke since the day you were born. It is the smell of safety. Outside, the wind is picking up again. You hear it moaning around the eaves of the thatch, looking for a way in. It rattles the wooden shutter. But the walls are thick wattle and daub a foot deep. The mud holds, the house holds. You finish the stitch and tie off the cord. You rub tallow fat into the leather to soften it. The grease smells of mutton. You work it in with your thumbs, feeling the heat of friction soften the stiff hide. You look up. The square of light from the window is turning a deep, bruised purple. Twilight is coming. The short winter day is already dying. The rhythm of the house must shift again. The animals need tending. The fire needs banking for the evening. The transition to the long night begins. You set the harness aside, stand and stretch, your shadow stretching long and flickering against the wall as the fire flares up. You look at your wife. She catches the spindle, winds the yarn, and nods, knows. It is time to go back out to the byre. The light at the window has failed. The bruise of purple twilight has deepened into the heavy, absolute black of a moonless winter night. Inside the cottage, the transition is marked not by a clock, but by the shrinking of the visible world. During the day, your domain extended to the horizon of the woods and the Lord's fields. Now, your world has contracted to the reach of the firelight. You stand up from the stool, your knees popping audibly in the quiet room. As the mended harness is set aside, a job well done, but the day is not finished. The most important members of your household are waiting. You pick up a rushlight holder from the table. It is a simple iron clip on a stand. You take a rush along, pithy reed dipped in mutton fat, and pinch it into the jaws of the holder. You lean it into the hearth fire. The grease sizzles, bubbles, and then catches with a small, smoky yellow flame. It does not give off the clean, bright light of the beeswax candles used in the church, nor even the steady glow of a tallow candle. It gives a dim, flickering illumination that smells of frying fat. But it is light and it is free, gathered from the marsh and rendered from your own cooking scraps. Holding the rushlight, you step over the low wooden partition that divides your living space from the byre. The temperature shifts immediately. If the hearthroom was warm, the byre is hot. It is a wet, biological heat generated by the metabolism of large ruminants. The air here is thick, almost solid with the scent of ammonia, wet straw, and the sweet, grassy breath of the animals. To a modern nose, this might be overpowering. To you it is the smell of security. It's the smell of capital. The rushlight casts long, swinging shadows against the thatched ceiling as you move. Eyes reflect the flame, large, liquid, and calm. First, the ox. He is standing now, his massive head lowered. He is a dark shape in the gloom, a mountain of muscle and bone. He turns to look at you, his chewing slowing for a moment. You reach out and scratch the curly hair between his horns. His hide is rough, caked with the dried mud of the fields, but beneath it, the heat of his body radiates into your hand. He is hungry. You move to the fodder store at the far end of the byre. You do not feed him the best hay that is for the cow who gives milk. The ox gets a mixture of straw, the dried stalks of wheat or rye left over after threshing, and a little meadow hay. You grab a pitchfork, a simple wooden tool, a forked branch of ash stripped of bark and polished smooth. You pitch the fodder into the manger. The dry rustle of the straw fills the quiet. The ox wastes no time. He dips his head, and the rhythmic sound of tearing and crunching begins. Crunch, grind, swallow. It is a sound that will continue through the night, a lullaby of consumption. Next, you check the water trough. It is a hollowed-out log sitting on the earthen floor. It is half empty. You sigh, knowing what this means. You return to the main room, grab the wooden buckets, and head for the door. Opening the door is like opening an airlock into the void. The wind has picked up, whistling around the corners of the cottage. The cold is a physical blow after the humidity of the byre. You step out only as far as the rain barrel that stands under the eaves. It is covered with a thin sheet of ice. You smash it with the heel of your bucket. You dip, fill, and hurry back inside, water splashing onto your woolen hose. You pour the water into the trough. The animals drink deep, long draughts, the surface of the water rippling in the rushlight. Now the cow. She is smaller than the ox, a dun-colored beast with a bony ridge along her back. She is the mother of the house as much as your wife is. She provides the milk that makes the cheese, the butter, and the whey that feeds the pigs. She is lying down, chewing her cud. You tap her flank gently. "Up, girl," you murmur. The language you use with the animals is a soft patois of clicks and low tones, a language older than English. She groans a low, resonant sound, and heaves herself up, hind legs first, then front. You pull a three-legged milking stool from the corner. It is low, bringing you down to the level of the udder. You place the wooden milking pail between your knees. You rest your forehead against the cow's warm flank. Oh, you can hear her digestion, the gurgle of her stomach's processing the grass. You can feel her heartbeat, slow and powerful. You begin to milk. TSSST, TSSST, TSSST. The first streams hit the side of the wooden pail with a sharp percussive sound. As the milk pools in the bottom, the sound changes, deepening to a frothy, muffled drumming. Thrum, thrum. Your hands move in a practiced rhythm. Squeeze, pull, release. It's squeeze, pull, release. The milk is warm, steaming slightly in the cold air. The smell is sweet and rich. This is a moment of peace. The cow is content, relieved of the pressure. You are content, harvesting the day's yield. The rushlight flickers, casting dancing shadows of your hands against the wattle wall. This milk will not be drunk fresh. That is a luxury, or a waste, depending on how you look at it. It will be set in shallow pans to let the cream rise for tomorrow's churning. The skimmed milk will be made into cheese. Nothing is wasted. When the udder is empty, you pat her flank again in thanks. She immediately lies back down, folding her legs under her with a huff of satisfaction. There are other lives here to attend to. In a basket woven of willow, suspended from a peg on the wall to keep it safe from rats, a hen is roosting. You check under her, sliding your hand gently beneath her warm feathers. She clucks indignantly and pecks at your wrist, but you are quick. You find an eggs, smooth, warm, perfect. You pocket it carefully. It is a small treasure. Finally, you look to the floor. The mucking out is a morning chore, but you must ensure the bedding is dry for the night. You take the pitchfork and kick some fresh bracken over the soiled spots. The bracken was gathered in the autumn from the heath, dried brown and crisp. It is absorbent and antiseptic. You spread it around the sleeping areas. The animals settle into the fresh crispness of it. You stand in the center of the byre for a moment, listening. The ox is chewing. The cow is breathing deeply. The wind is howling outside. the contrast is stark. Here, inside this fragile shell of mud and timber, life is sustained against the elements. You feel a profound sense of ownership, not in the legal sense. For the land belongs to the Lord, but in the spiritual sense, you are the steward of this warmth. You step back over the partition into the hall. Your wife has prepared the table for the evening. It is not a heavy meal like dinner. It is supper. A light repast to tide you over the long night. There is the rest of the bread, perhaps toasted near the fire. There is a piece of the cheese. There is the last of the ale. But before you sit, you must secure the fortress. You go to the main door. It is heavy oak, darkened by years of smoke and handling. You push it firmly into the frame. You lift the heavy wooden bar beam of ash as thick as your arm and drop it into the iron brackets. Thunk. The sound is final. The world outside is locked away. The wolves, the thieves, the wind, the spirits of the night, they are on the other side. You are inside. You check the window shutter. You slide the bolt across. You stuff a rag of old wool into a crack where a draft is whistling through the daub. The noise stops. The room is now a sealed vessel. The smoke from the fire and the rushlight hangs in a strata above your head, slowly filtering out through the thatch, but keeping the heat down where you are. You return to the hearth. Extinguish the rushlight to save the fat, pinching the flame out with your calloused thumb and forefinger. The fire is the only light now, is burned down to a bed of glowing red coals, pulsing with a deep, calm heat. You sit on the bench. Your body is tired. It is a good tiredness, the heavy, dull ache of muscles that have been used for their intended purpose. You unwrap the wool bindings from your ankles. You kick off your leather shoes. You stretch your feet towards the fire. The heat penetrates your soles, soothing the chill that has lived in your bones since you went out to the well. Your wife hands you a cup of ale. You drink. It is room temperature, but the room is warm, so the ale is comforting. The children are already asleep. They lie on a pallet near the wall, covered in sheepskins. They are breathing in the same rhythm as the house. Break a piece of bread and eat it slowly. You do not talk much. The time for words is done. The time for thinking is done. Now is the time for existing. You watch the embers. You see shapes in them, castles, faces, mountains. It is the television of the 13th century. You think briefly of tomorrow. The weather feels like it is turning. The wind has a wet edge to it. Perhaps it will snow. If it snows, there will be no work in the woods. You might spend the day threshing in the barn or repairing the tools. The thought is not stressful. It is merely a calculation of logistics. You finish your bread, you finish your ale. The fire needs to be curfews again. The cycle must close. You take the poker. You do not put the fire out. God forbid. You bank it. You rake the ashes from the edge of the hearth over the center pile of coals. You cover the red eyes of the fire with a gray blanket of their own remains. The light in the room dies down to a faint, sullen glow. Heat is trapped inside the mound, waiting to be born again at dawn. You stand in the semi-darkness. You strip off your tunic and hose, shivering slightly as the cool air hits your skin. You climb into the box bed, onto the straw mattress. The straw rustles loud in the silence. You pull the heavy woolen blanket up to your chin. Your wife is beside you, a warm presence in the dark. You can hear the ox on the other side of the wall, shifting his weight. Thump. You can hear the wind scratching at the thatch like a living thing trying to get in. But you are warm. You are full. You are safe. Your eyes close. The darkness of the room merges with the darkness of sleep. The boundary between you and the history of the world dissolves. You drift away, held in the cozy, smoky, animal warmth of the medieval night. The new day arrives not with light, but with sound. It is the wind. The weather has indeed turned, just as you suspected by the fire last night. The wind is no longer the sharp, clean bite of frost. It is a heavy, blustering gale that drives rain against the thatch in sudden, angry bursts. Rat-a-tat-tat. The sound is close, intimate, right above your head. You lie in the warmth of the straw for a moment longer than usual. The urgency of the fields is dampened by the rain. You cannot plow in mud, cannot coppice in a downpour. The land is closed to you today, but this does not mean rest. It means the work moves inward, under the shelter of the great oak beams. Today is a day for the barn. Today is a day for the grain. You rise. The routine familiar, though your muscles complain with a dull ache from yesterday's woodcutting. You dress quickly in the damp chill of the room. The fire is low, just a sullen red eye in the ash, but your wife is already up, coaxing it back to life. You eat a cold crust of bread, drink a draught of water, and prepare for a different kind of labor. You step out the back door, ducking your head against the driving rain. The yard is a slurry of mud. The pigs are huddled in their sty, grunting unhappy protests against the wet. You splash across the few yards of open ground to the barn. The barn is your cathedral of storage. It is built like your house, cruck-framed and thatched, but it is taller, draftier, and smells intensely of dry dust and mice. It is the bank vault of the family. Stacked high in the bays are the sheaves of rye and wheat harvested last August. They are your savings account, your currency, and your survival. You shake the rain from your cloak and hang it on a peg. The air here is dry, despite the weather outside. The thatch is thick. You take a moment to appreciate the dryness. In a world of mud, a dry floor is a luxury. You move to the threshing floor. This is the central aisle of the barn. Unlike the earthen floor of your cottage, this floor is timber-thick planks of oak, fitted tight and smooth. It acts as a sounding board in a clean surface. You sweep it carefully with a birch broom. Not a single grain must be lost to dirt or cracks. You pull down a few sheaves of wheat from the stack. The stalks are golden yellow, brittle, and light. You lay them in 2 parallel rows on the floor, the heads of the grain facing inward, touching each other. You reach for the tool of the day, the flail. The flail is a deceptive instrument. It looks simple, but it requires a rhythm as precise as a drummer's. It consists of 2 parts. The handstaff is the handle, a long, straight pole of ash or hazel smoothed by years of gripping. The swingle is the beater, a shorter, thicker stick made of dense, heavy holly or blackthorn. They are connected by a chape, a cunning joint of leather and eelskin that allows the swingle to spin freely. You grip the handstaff. You stand at the head of the rows. You begin. Swing, crack. Swing, crack. You lift the staff, and the heavy swingle swings up and over your shoulder. You bring it down, not with brute force, but with a guided momentum. The swingle strikes the heads of the wheat flat on the floor. Twack. The sound is loud, a dry pistol crack that echoes in the high rafters. It is the heartbeat of winter. If you walk through the village on a rainy day, you will hear this sound coming from every barna syncopated rhythm of survival. Thwack, thwack. You work your way down the line. The impact shatters the ears of wheat, loosening the grains from the husks. You must hit hard enough to break the bond, but not so hard that you bruise the grain or smash the kernel. It is a finesse shot repeated 10,000 times. Your breathing settles into the rhythm. Inhale on the upswing, exhale on the strike. As dust begins to rise, a fine, golden mist that coats your eyebrows, your eyelashes, and the inside of your nose. It tastes sweet and dry. After working down the row, you stop. You use the handle of the flail to flip the sheaves over, and you start again. Swing, crack, swing, crack. This is solitary work. It leaves your mind free to wander, but your body is locked in a cage of repetition. You think of the flour this will make. You think of the bread. You think of the hunger of late spring, the hungry gap, and you strike harder, ensuring every last calorie is beaten from the stalk. When the sheaves are thoroughly threshed, you set the flail aside. Your arms are vibrating, the shock of the impact still ringing in your bones. Now comes the separation. You use a pitchfork to lift the straw, the long, empty stalks. Shake them vigorously. The loose grain falls to the wooden floor with a sound like rain. You toss the straw aside. It will be used for bedding the ox or thatching a roof. What remains on the floor is a pile of corn mixed with chaff, the papery husks that protected the grain. You cannot eat the chaff. You open the double doors of the barn at both ends. The wind from outside howls through the tunnel, swirling the dust. This is what you were waiting for. You need the draft. You pick up the winnowing fan, a large, shallow basket woven of wicker. You scoop up the mixture of grain and chaff, stand in the draft. You lift the basket high and pour the contents out in a steady stream. Gravity and aerodynamics take over. The grain, heavy and dense, falls straight down in a golden cascade. The chaff, light and airy, is caught by the wind and blown sideways, drifting away like snow. It is a magic trick of physics. You repeat it, scoop after scoop. The pile of clean grain grows at your feet, a pyramid of sustenance. The chaff piles up against the wall. When you are done, you have a pile of wheat berries. They are hard, amber-colored beads. You run your hand through them. They're cool and smooth, flowing like water. This is the finished product of a year's labor, from plowing to sowing to weeding to reaping to threshing to winnowing. But you cannot eat hard berries. You need flour. You fill 2 jute sacks with the grain. They are heavy, perhaps 50 pounds each. You tie the tops with twine. You lift one onto your shoulder, grunting under the weight, and carry it to the door. You load it onto a small 2-wheeled handcart. You load the second one. You pull your hood up. The rain has eased to a drizzle, but the mud is deep. You grab the handles of the cart. It is time to visit the miller. The journey to the mill is a social one. The mill is the hub of the village, the place where paths converge. As you drag the cart through the muck of the lane, you see others. There is Thomas, carrying a sack on his back. There's Agnes, leading a donkey laden with panniers. You nod. Godspeed, you mutter. Godspeed, they reply. You hear the mill before you see it. It is a low rumble, a vibration in the ground that competes with the wind. The mill sits by the stream, a diverted channel of the river that flows past the village. The building is stone-based, timber-framed above, shaking with the power of the water. The water wheel is turning. It is an undershot wheel, dipping its paddles into the rushing current. The stream is swollen with the rain, brown and churning. The wheel groans as it turns, a rhythmic creak splash. Creak splash. You park your cart by the door. There is a queue. You are not the only one who decided that a rainy day is a milling day. This is the village newsroom. While you wait, leaning against the damp stone wall, you listen. The bailiff is looking for men to fix the bridge, someone says. The widow miller's cow is calved. A bull calf, they say. The price of salt is up at the market town. You absorb this information. It is the data you need to navigate your society. Finally, it is your turn. You haul your sacks into the mill. The noise inside is deafening. It is a cacophony of wood on wood, stone on stone. The air is thick with white dust. It coats everything, the beams, the floor, the spider webs in the corner, and the miller himself. Miller John is a big man, his face permanently pale with flour dust. He does not smile much. He is suspected, as all millers are, of having a golden thumb, of pressing down on the scale, or taking a little too much for himself. But you need him. He controls the technology. You heave your sack onto the scale. He checks the weight. He nods. Then comes the mulcher. This is the fee. You do not pay in coin, you have no coin. Pay in grain. Takes a wooden scoop and dips it into your sack, taking out a portion. It is usually 1/16 of the grist. You watch him like a hawk. He knows you are watching. He levels the scoop carefully, fair enough this time. He dumps his payment into his own bin. He pours your grain into the hopper. This is a wooden funnel suspended above the stones. You watch the machinery work. It is the most complex engineering you will ever see. The water wheel outside turns a massive oak axle. This enters the mill and turns a system of gears, wooden cogs with teeth made of apple wood. The vertical gear turns the horizontal gear, speeding up the rotation. Above, the runner stone spins. It is a massive disc of grit stone weighing a ton, balanced perfectly on a spindle. It hovers just a fraction of an inch above the bed stone, which is stationary. Your grain falls from the hopper. A small wooden stick, called the damsel, chatters against the hopper as the stone spins clack, clack, clack. This vibration shakes the grain down in a steady trickle. The grain falls into the eye of the runner stone. It is caught between the two stones. The carved grooves in the stone, sharp as scissors, shear the berries open. They grind the husk, the bran, and the white endosperm together. The friction creates heat. You can smell it, a toasty, warm, scorched smell. This is stone ground in the literal sense. The flour emerges from the edges of the stones, warm and soft, spilling down a chute into the meal bin below. It is done quickly. Your 2 sacks of hard grain have become 2 sacks of soft, warm meal. It is wholemeal flour, dark and speckled with bran. You scoop it back into your sacks. It feels different, now lighter, fluffier, but packing tighter. You tie the sacks. You are covered in white dust, a ghost of the harvest. You nod to the miller. Good day, he shouts over the roar of the gears. You step back out into the gray afternoon. The silence of the outside world is startling after the roar of the mill. The rain has stopped, leaving the world dripping and glistening. You load the cart again. The journey back is lighter in spirit, if not in weight. You have secured the food. The grain in the barn was potential. The flour in the sack is possibility, is bread, is pottage, is life. As you trudge back up the lane, the clouds in the west break. A shaft of pale, watery sunlight strikes the wet thatch of the village roofs, turning them to silver. The church bell rings for vespers. The day is winding down. You reach your cottage. You bring the flour inside. Your wife looks up from her spinning. She sees the sacks. She smiles, a genuine, relieved smile. She knows what this means. You sit on the bench, wiping the flour from your face. You are tired. The vibration of the flail is still in your arms. The roar of the mill is still in your ears. But it is a good tiredness. The cycle is complete. The earth gave the grain, the flail released it, the wind cleaned it, and the stone transformed it. Tonight, the bread will taste different. It will taste of the new grind. You lean back, the fire is warm, the house is quiet. Close your eyes for a moment, listening to the drip of the eaves. The boring history of survival continues, one sack at a time. The sack of flour sits in the corner of your room, a heavy, silent testament to the day's success. The immediate pressure of survival has lifted, if only for a few days. The wind outside has dropped, leaving a silence that feels amplified by the earlier roaring of the mill. The evening stretches out before you, unusual in its lack of immediate demands. You step outside to check the sky. The clouds have scudded away to the east, revealing a canopy of stars so bright and numerous they seem to press down upon the rooftops. Without light pollution, the Milky Way is a distinct bruised smear of white across the black void. It is beautiful, but you do not stare at it for poetry's sake. You look to judge the frost. It will be cold tonight. As you look down the muddy lane, your eye is caught by a signal. Hanging above the door of a cottage 3 crofts down, the home of Agnes, the widow, is a large bundle of fresh greenery. It is a bush, likely a branch of holly or broom, illuminated by the faint orange glow spilling from her open shutter. This is the medieval neon sign. It means only one thing: the ale is ready. Agnes is a brewster in your village. Brewing is not an industry run by a factory, it is a domestic rotation. When a household has a surplus of malt and the time to process it, they brew a large batch. Since the ale is unhopped and contains no preservatives, it does not keep. It must be consumed within days of fermentation, or it will sour into vinegar. So when the ale's good, the bush goes up, and the neighbors are invited to help drink it before it spoils. You turn back inside. Agnes has the bush up, you say. Your wife looks up from her sewing. She nods. It is a welcome announcement. It means heat, company, and calories that do not require chewing. You do not change your clothes, you possess no evening wear. But you do run a wet hand through your hair, and perhaps wipe the worst of the mill dust from your face. You take a few copper farthings from a hidden nook in the wall, just in case, though often the trade is in kind or credit. You walk together down the lane. The mud is freezing now, crunching like sugar under your boots. The village is dark shapes against a darker sky, but the doorway of Agnes's cottage is a beacon of yellow light. You duck your head to enter. The atmosphere inside is strikingly different from the calm of your own home. It is crowded. Perhaps 10 or 12 of your neighbors are squeezed into the main room. The air is hot, humid, and loud. It smells of wet wool, wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and the overwhelming sweet sour scent of fermenting grain. Agnes stands by a large tun in the center of the room. She is a formidable woman, her arms thick from kneading dough and hauling water. She holds a ladle. Find a space on a bench near the wall. You're greeted with nods and grunts. The mill was busy, says Thomas, who is already nursing a leather jack of ale. The stones were hot. You agree? This is the extent of the small talk for now. You are here for the ale. Agnes approaches. You hand her a coin, or perhaps you merely nod, and she marks a chalk tally on the wall above the hearth. She dips a wooden bowl into the tun and hands it to you. The vessel is a mazer, a shallow bowl turned from maple wood, polished smooth by years of lips and fingers. You lift it with both hands. The ale is room temperature, or perhaps slightly warmer from the heat of the house. It is opaque, the color of muddy river water, has no head of foam like modern beer. You take a long draught. It's thick. It coats your tongue. It tastes of toasted bread, of sweet honey, though there is none in it, and of the herbs used to flavor it: ground ivy, mugwort, and a hint of spicy yarrow. It is not bitter. It is small nourishment, liquid bread. The alcohol is present, a warm bloom in your stomach, but it is not the sharp hit of spirits. It is a slow-burning fuel. You pass the bowl to your wife. She drinks and sighs, the tension of the spinning wheel leaving her shoulders. The room settles into a hum of conversation. This is the village parliament, the newspaper, and the theater, all in one. There's no privacy here. Everyone knows how much flour you brought home. Everyone knows whose pig is sick. Everyone knows who was scolded by the priest for sleeping during Mass. The steward says the Lord will be visiting next month, says a man named Walter, leaning forward. His face is weathered, deep lines etched around his eyes. He comes for the rents, Thomas grumbles. He comes for the hunting, says another. The deer are thick in the high woods. You listen, absorbing the politics of your existence. The lord of the manor is a distant figure, a planet around which your world orbits, but rarely seen, prevailing. His arrival means increased scrutiny. Perhaps extra labor duties Boone work to prepare the manor house. It is a ripple of anxiety in the room, but the ale softens it. In the corner, two older men are hunched over a board, resting on their knees. It is a game of Merrills, or Nine Men's Morris. The board is not a manufactured toy. It is scratched into the surface of an old barrel lid. The pieces are distinct pebbles, one side playing white quartz, the other playing dark flint. Click, click, click. You watch the game. It is a battle of strategy, older than the Romans. The men do not speak. They place their stones with deliberate slowness. One forms a mill, 3 in a row. He removes one of his opponent's stones. A groan from the watchers. This is the spectator sport of the evening. The heat in the room is rising. The fire in Annis's hearth is roaring, fed by the contributions of the guests. A log here, a faggot there. The smoke hangs low, a blue stratum that stings the eyes, but no one minds. It keeps the drafts away. Someone starts a song. What is not a bawdy tavern song of later centuries, but a slow, rhythmic ballad about the changing of the seasons. It has a droning quality, a melody that circles back on itself like the agricultural year. The wind blows cold on the barley mow, and the snow lies deep on the harrow. Voices join in. The harmony is rough, unpolished, but resonant. You hum the bass line, a vibration in your chest. These songs are the repository of memory. They tell you when to plant, when to reap, and how to survive the dark. Your gaze drifts around the room. You see the tools of daily life hanging on the walls: baskets, dried herbs, a flail, a coil of rope. In this light, softened by the haze, they look less like instruments of toil and more like the decorations of a shared life. You feel a profound sense of belonging. These people are your safety net. If your barn burns down, they will help you rebuild it. If you fall ill, they will harvest your strip of land. In exchange, you will do the same for them. It is a bond forged in necessity and sealed with ale. The bowl comes around again. You are feeling merry. This is the medieval term for the sweet spot of inebriation, not drunk. Not out of control, but lifted above the ache of the muscles and the worry of the mind. The world seems manageable. The cold outside seems less deadly. The story begins. It is old Martha, the village matriarch, who sits nearest the fire. Her voice is cracked but strong. She tells of the great storm of 40 years ago when the church tower fell. She describes the sound of the stone cracking, the wind that sounded like the devil's own trumpet. You have heard the story a dozen times. You know exactly when the tower falls in the narrative. Yet you listen with rapt attention. Repetition is the point. Confirms that the past happened, that you survived it, and that the village endures. And the bell, she rasps, the great bell buried itself 6 feet in the earth. And they say, on a quiet night, you can still hear it ringing underground. A silence follows, filled only by the crackle of the logs. You find yourself straining to hear a phantom bell beneath the floorboards. The night wears on. The level in the tun drops. The bush outside has done its job. The ale is safe in the bellies of the village, converted into laughter and sleepiness. The crowd begins to thin. There is no designated closing time, but the biology of the peasant dictates the schedule. Dawn waits for no man, and the ox will need feeding before the sun is up. You stand. The room spins gently, then rights itself. You bid your farewells. "Good night, Agnes. The brew was good." "God keep you," she replies, marking the final tally. You step out of the cottage. The cold hits you like a hammer. The contrast is shocking. The sweat on your skin turns to ice instantly. You pull your cloak tight, burying your chin in the rough wool. The silence of the outside world is absolute again. The stars seem sharper, harder than before. You walk home, your arm linked with your wife's. You navigate the mud by muscle memory. The alcohol makes your feet feel light, though they are heavy with clay. You reach your door, you slide the bar back. You enter your own home. It feels cooler than Agnes's, but it smells right. It smells of your smoke, your animals. You do the final rounds. You check the embers of your own fire, which is burned down to a slumbering pile of gray. You check the door bar again, testing its solidity. You lean over the partition to listen to the animals. The ox is asleep, his breathing a slow, rhythmic bellows. You strip off your outer layers. The air in the bedroom is chilly, but the bed is waiting. You climb into the straw. It warms up quickly under the sheepskins. As you lie there, the hum of the alehouse still in your ears, you feel a deep, heavy contentment. The day was successful. The grain is threshed. The flour is ground. The community is whole. The ale was sweet. Your thoughts drift. You think of the spring that is coming. You think of the green shoots that will push through the mud. But that is for the future. For now, there is only the dark, the warmth, and the long, dreamless sleep of the just. You close your eyes. The world fades. The morning arrives differently today. It does not begin with the urgent, guttural call of the ox demanding fodder, nor with the gray anxiety of the weather. It begins with a sound that descends from above. It's vibrating through the thatch and into the very marrow of the house. Dong, dong, dong. It is the church bell. It is Sunday, the Lord's Day, or perhaps a high feast day. To you, the distinction is theological, but the practical effect is the same: the cessation of labor. The heavy wheel of agricultural time grinds to a halt. The plow stays in the shed. The billhook remains hanging on the wall. The flail lies silent on the threshing floor. You wake slowly. There is no rush to beat the sun. The law of the church and the law of the manor both forbid work today. To labor on the Sabbath is to risk a fine from the bailiff and the peril of your immortal soul. It is a mandatory rest, enforced by the highest powers in your universe. You push back the blankets. The cottage is cold. The fire was allowed to die down lower than usual, as no early breakfast needed cooking. You rise and move to the water bucket. Today, the morning ritual is more elaborate. You do not just splash your face, you wash. You take a small piece of soap from a hidden niche. It is a rare luxury, a soft, dark lump made of wood, ash, and tallow, smelling faintly of goat fat. You scrub your neck, your hands, your face. You use a rough linen cloth to scour the dirt of the week from your skin. You are preparing to enter the presence of the divine, and you must be clean. You dress with care. You put on your cleanest shirt, the one with fewer patches, bleached whiter by the sun. You pull on your best hose, the wool dyed a deeper blue with woad. Fasten your tunic with a leather belt that has a brass buckle, polished until it gleams in the firelight. Your wife is doing the same, fastening a brooch of pewter to her headscarf. Even the children are scrubbed and combed, their unruly hair plastered down with water. You eat a small piece of bread, but you do not gorge. Fast must be kept before Mass. You open the door. The village is transformed. The usual soundscape of industry, the ringing of the smith's hammer, the creak of the mill, the shout of the herdsman is absent. The silence is profound, broken only by the persistent summoning toll of the bell. Dong dong. You step out into the lane. You are not alone. From every cottage, families are emerging. They walk slowly, with a dignity that is absent during the working week. There are no carts, no tools, no burdens on their backs. This is the weekly parade of the peasantry. You walk towards the stone tower that dominates the village. The church is the only building made of stone. Everything else is wood, mud, and straw materials that rot, burn, and return to the earth. The church is built to last until the end of days. It is the anchor of time. You pass through the lich gate, the roofed entry to the churchyard. The ground here is bumpy, uneven with the grassy mounds of the dead. There are no headstones with names. The poor do not get marble markers, but you know where your father lies, and his father before him. You step carefully. This earth is literal bone and dust of your ancestors. You are walking on your history. You reach the church porch. It is a deep, sheltered archway. This is a place of business on weekdays, where contracts are sworn and marriages are arranged, but today it is the threshold of the sacred. You cross yourself as you pass through the heavy oak door, iron-banded and ancient. Inside, the world changes again. If your cottage is dark, the church is a revelation of color. We often imagine medieval churches as gray and drab, the bare stone exposed. But to you, the church is a riot of paint. The walls are plastered and covered in frescoes. To your right, St. Christopher carries the Christ child across a river, his legs painted as thick as tree trunks. To your left, St. George drives a spear into a green dragon with red eyes. And above the chancel arch, dominating the room, is the Doom, the Last Judgment. You look up at it, as you do every Sunday. It is a terrifying and comforting map of the cosmos. On one side, the saved are being led by angels into a golden city of towers. They look peaceful, doomed. On the other side, the damned are being dragged by hairy black demons into the gaping maw of a great beast hell's mouth. You see pots boiling, fires burning, and pitchforks prodding naked souls. It is a graphic novel painted on plaster. It tells you exactly what the stakes are. You do not need to read Latin to understand this. Be good. Obey the church, work hard, and you go to the gold city. Sin, rebel, and you go to the pot. Move into the nave. There are no pews. The nave is an open space, like a great hall. The floor is flagged with stone, covered in fresh rushes that smell of meadowsweet and rosemary, scattered to mask the smell of the congregation. You stand. The men gather on the south side, the women on the north. You find your place among your neighbors. You stand shoulder to shoulder with the miller, the blacksmith, and the plowman. Here, technically, you are equal souls before God. The service begins. The priest enters, wearing vestments of green silk embroidered with gold thread. The fabric shimmers in the light of the beeswax candles on the altar. The contrast with the rough wool of the congregation is stark. He is a representative of a power far greater than the lord of the manor. He speaks in Nomen Petrus, Ita Fili, Ita Spiritus, Sancti. You do not speak Latin. The words are sounds, not sentences, but you know what they mean. You know the rhythm. You know when to kneel, when to stand, when to bow your head. The Latin is a magical language, a code that unlocks the ear of God. It washes over you a droning, chanting river of sound. Kyrie, eleison, Christ eleison, Kyrie, eleison. The air grows thick. The priest swings the censer, a silver ball on a chain. Clouds of incense puff out. The smell is sharp, resinous, and exotic. It is frankincense and myrrh, brought from lands so far away you cannot even imagine them. It masks the smell of unwashed wool and damp bodies. It smells like holiness. You drift into a meditative state. You are not analyzing the sermon, which might be in English, if the priest is feeling generous, or it might be a mumbled homily. You are simply being. In a life of constant physical exertion, the act of standing still and listening is a luxury. You look at the stained glass in the narrow lancet windows, jewels of ruby and sapphire that turn the gray English light into divine rays. Then, the moment arrives. The Sanctus bell rings. Ting, ting, ting. The congregation falls to its knees. The rustle of fabric is like a wind moving through corn. The priest stands at the altar, his back to you. He raises his hands. He lifts the host the round wafer of bread. You look up. This is the climax of your week. You are seeing God. The church teaches that in this moment, the bread becomes the actual body of Christ. It is a miracle happening 20 feet away from you. You gaze at the white circle against the dark shadows of the chancel.
Ow.
You whisper a prayer, asking for a good harvest, for health, for the cow, for safety, for your children. Lifts the chalice. Right. The bell rings again. Then, the tension breaks. The priest lowers his hands. The miracle is complete. Towards the end of the service, the pox board is brought out. It is a small wooden or metal tablet with an image of the cross. The priest kisses it, then hands it to the lord of the manor. If he is present, then it is passed to the bailiff, and then to the villagers. You wait your turn. You kiss the wood, worn smooth by thousands of lips. Then you turn to your neighbor Thomas, the man you argued with over a boundary stone last week, and you offer the sign of peace. Peace be with you, and with you. It is a ritual of social cohesion. You cannot refuse the peace in the house of God. The grudge is suspended, the mass ends. 8. Missa est. You stream out of the church into the bright midday light. The solemnity evaporates the moment you cross the threshold of the porch. The churchyard, so quiet before, becomes a village green. Sunday afternoon is for holy day activities. This does not mean more prayer. It means play. The church is the center of social life. You see the young men gathering near the yew tree. They're setting up the butts, targets made of straw covered in canvas. Archery practice, the bailiff calls out. It is the king's law. Every able-bodied man must practice with the longbow on Sundays and holidays. Football is banned, though often played anyway. Dice are frowned upon, but archery is mandatory. It is national defense disguised as sport. Go to your house and retrieve your bow. It is a piece of you, taller than you are, D-shaped in cross-section. It is not a delicate instrument. It is a war machine. The draw weight is heavy, perhaps 80 or 90 pounds. You return to the butts. You string the bow, stepping through it and bending the wood with your leg muscles. You take an arrow from your belt. It is ash fletched with goose feathers, tipped with a heavy iron bodkin point. You stand at the mark. You do not aim with one eye closed. You use your whole body. You plant your feet. You grip the wood. Draw creak. The wood protests. You pull the string to your ear, engaging the massive muscles of your back and shoulder. This is why Englishmen have crooked spines in old age. The tension is immense. Loose. The string slaps your bracer leather arm guard. The arrow flies with a hiss thud. It strikes the target. Good length, Thomas says. He steps up and draws. You spend an hour shooting. It is competitive, loud, and satisfying. It is a different kind of exertion, explosive and skillful, rather than the grinding endurance of the field. You bet small copper coins or pints of ale on the shots. After the archery, the day relaxes further. You return home for the main meal. On Sundays, the pottage is better. Perhaps there is a piece of saltfish, or bacon, or even fresh meat if a rabbit was snared quietly in the woods. You eat with your family, sitting in the sun outside the cottage door if the weather holds. The afternoon is slow. You might whittle a new handle for a tool or mend a fishing net. You might walk to the stream and watch the water. You're not idle, but you are not working. You are maintaining your life. As the sun begins to set, painting the sky in violet and gold, the church bell rings again for vespers. You do not always go to the evening service, but you hear the bell. It marks the end of the truce. The Sabbath is closing. You sit by your fire as the evening chill returns. The silence of the morning feels far away now. The energy of the archery, the taste of the communion bread if you took it. Though often you only see it, the smell of the incense, these things linger in your mind. You look at your hands. They are clean, or at least cleaner than usual. The soap has done its work. Yes. But tomorrow, they will be brown with earth again. Tomorrow is Monday. The plow waits. The ox waits. The earth waits. But for tonight, you are rested. You have touched the spiritual, you have reaffirmed your place in the community, and you have kept the law. You bank the fire. The cycle turns. The season turns, not with a sudden burst of warmth, but with a shift in the texture of the mud. For weeks, the ground has been a hard, ringing iron plate, frozen solid by the winter winds. Now, under a sun that lingers a little longer each afternoon, the world is softening. The ice in the ruts turns to slush. The slush turns to deep, clinging clay. The air smells different, no longer sharp and sterile, but rich, damp, and heavy with the scent of waking soil. It is the smell of rot and rebirth entwined. It is March. The Hungry Gap is approaching that dangerous time when the winter stores are dwindling and the new harvest is months away. But there is no time for fear. There is only time for the great work. The fields must be turned. You wake before the dawn. The light is different now. The pitch black of midwinter has given way to a deep pre-morning gray. The birds are already singing a chaotic, hopeful chorus that was absent a month ago. You eat a larger portion of bread this morning? You will need it. Today is not a day for whittling by the fire or threshing in the dry barn. Today is a day of maximum exertion. You go to the buyer. The ox knows. He senses the change in your energy, the change in the season. His winter coat is beginning to shed, coming off in tufts when you brush him. You harness him, but today the gear is heavier. You place the heavy wooden yoke across his neck, the one with the iron ring. You lead him out, not to the pasture, but to the lane. You are not alone. From the other cottages, your neighbors are emerging, each leading their own beasts. This is the definition of your community. The plow team. You own one ox, a heavy plow. The technological marvel that feeds your civilization requires 8. It takes the combined strength of 4 families to turn the earth of the manor. You meet Thomas, Walter, and the others at the headland of the great open field. There it sits, the heavy moldboard plow. It is a monstrous tool, a collection of wood and iron that looks like an instrument of torture, but is actually an instrument of life. It has a heavy timber beam, a pair of wheels in the front, a recent innovation that helps control the depth and the business end behind. There are 3 parts to the cutting mechanism, and you know them as well as you know your own children's names. First, the coulter, a vertical knife of iron that hangs down from the beam. Its job is to slice the sod vertically, cutting the roots of the weeds. Second, the share, a horizontal iron wedge that follows behind, slicing the soil underneath. And third, the moldboard, a curved wooden board, often reinforced with iron, that catches the slice of earth and flips it over. This flipping is crucial. It buries the weeds and brings the nutrient-rich subsoil to the surface. It creates the ridges and furrows that drain the field. You hitch your ox to the team. There is a hierarchy here. The strongest, steadiest oxen go at the back, nearest the plow tail. The younger, more flighty ones go at the front. Your ox, steady and old, is hitched near the rear. The team stands in pairs, a breathing, stamping engine of 8 tons of muscle. The plowman, usually the most experienced man among you, takes the handles. He does not drive the oxen. His hands are full, fighting the earth. The driving is done by the caller or the goadsman, a younger man or boy who walks alongside the team carrying a long stick, singing to the beasts, encouraging them with shouts and whistles. Heave. The cry goes up. The whip cracks, not on the flesh, but in the air. The team lurches forward. Chains pull taut with a snap. Wood groans, scritch crunch. The sound of the plow biting the earth is unique. It is a tearing sound. The coulter rips the grass mat. The share grinds against stones. The moldboard slides the heavy clay over with a wet schlap. You walk alongside. Your job today might be to clear the stones, or to help guide the team, or simply to take your turn at the handles when the plowman tires. And tire he will. The plow fights back. Every root, every rock sends a shockwave up the handles. To plow is to wrestle the planet. The pace is slow. An ox does not hurry. It walks with a plodding, unstoppable rhythm. Step, squelch, step, squelch. You walk the length of the furlong. It is 220 yards, the distance an ox can pull before it needs to stop and breathe. At the end of the furlong, you reach the headland, the strip of unplowed grass at the edge of the field used for turning. This is the hardest part. Team is long and unwieldy. Hup, hup, come around. You help push the beasts, guiding them in a wide arc. The plow is dragged out of the earth, heavy and mud-caked. You clean the blade with a paddle-shaped stick called a plow staff, then you line them up for the return trip. You plow the strip in a clockwise spiral, throwing the soil inwards to create a high ridge in the center. This is the architecture of the landscape. You are building the land up to keep the wheat's feet dry. As the sun climbs, the day warms. Steam rises from the backs of the oxen, a mist that smells of wet fur and sweat. You sweat too, your wool tunic damp against your back. The field is transforming. The green, weed-choked surface is being consumed, replaced by ribbons of dark, shining brown. The birds arrive. They appear from nowhere. Gulls blown in from the coast, rooks from the high trees, starlings. They follow the plow in a raucous white and black cloud, diving into the fresh furrow to snatch up the worms and beetle grubs exposed by the share. Their crying is the soundtrack of the tillage. By midday you stop. The oxen need to rest and eat. You sit on the headland eating your bread and cheese. Your hands are shaking slightly from the vibration of the work. You look at the field. You've done perhaps half an acre. It doesn't look like much in the vastness of the landscape, but it is an acre that will feed you. The afternoon wears on. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. Pull, tear, step. Pull, tear, step. You lose track of time. There is only the furrow. You watch the earth curl over, shining and slick, like a wave breaking in slow motion. When the light begins to fail, turning the brown earth to a deep purple, you unhitch the team. The oxen are tired, their heads hanging low. You lead your beast home. You scrape the worst of the mud from his legs, feed him extra hay, and check his hooves. He has worked harder than you today, but the plowing is only the preparation. The true act of faith comes next. A few days later, when the soil has dried slightly and settled, you return. This time you carry a seedlip, a kidney-shaped basket strapped to your chest. Inside is the grain, barley, and oats for the spring sowing. This grain is precious. It is food you could have eaten. It represents meals you denied yourself during the winter. To throw it onto the ground feels like madness. It is an act of supreme trust in the future. You walk the ridges. You do not measure with a spoon. You measure with the rhythm of your body. You step with your left foot, and your right hand sweeps out. Swish. The grain flies from your hand in a golden fan. It must be spread evenly. It's too thick, and the plants will choke each other. It's too thin, and the weeds will win. Step cast. Step cast. You are a human metronome. This is a skill learned from childhood, passed down from your father. Your hand knows the weight, the angle, the release. You are painting the mud with hope. Behind you comes the harrow. This is a heavy wooden frame with wooden teeth or iron, if you are lucky, dragged by a horse or an ox. It rakes over the surface, crumbling the clods of earth and covering the seed. The birds are your enemies now. The seed is left exposed. They will steal your harvest before it has even begun. You shout at them, waving your arms, while the harrow does its work. The day ends. The field is brown and smooth. The green is gone. The seed is hidden. You walk back to the village. You are covered in dust and dried mud. Your boots feel like lead weights. But there is a lightness in your heart that wasn't there in January. The die is cast. The work is out of your hands now. It is up to the rain, the sun, and God. You enter your cottage. The fire is burning. The pottage is bubbling. But the smell of the house is different to you now. After a day of smelling the raw, open earth, the house smells safe, enclosed, and domestic. You sit. You do not talk much. The sowing is a solemn time. It is a wager of life and death. The ground turned. Well, you say eventually. The moon is waxing. Your wife replies. It is a good time to grow. You look at your hands. The dust of the field is worked into the cracks of your skin. It will not wash out icily. You are made of this earth. You tend it, you turn it, you eat from it, and one day you will return to it, but not yet. Now you wait for the green. The world has turned green. It is a transformation so absolute that the gray, mud-locked days of February feel like a memory from a different life. The hungry gap that lean, stretching time between the exhaustion of the winter stores and the first harvestees at its peak, yet the world feels generous. The woods are a dense canopy of leaf. The meadows are waist-high with ryegrass, clover, and sorrel, waving in the warm breeze like an inland sea. Wake, and for the first time in months, you are not waking to darkness. The sun is already up, streaming through the cracks in the shutters, carrying with it the heat of June. The air inside the cottage is no longer damp and smoky. It is warm and smells of dust and dry thatch. The fire is unlit, a rare occurrence. In the summer months, the hearth is allowed to sleep during the day. Cooking done outside or in short bursts to avoid turning the house into an oven. Today, the village smells of one thing: lanolin. It is the greasy, waterproof scent of wool. It is shearing time. You dress in lighter clothes. The heavy wool tunic is set aside for a linen one, stained and worn, but breathable. You step outside. The sky is a shocking, endless blue, dotted with high, lazy clouds. Swallows who returned a month ago are diving and swooping around the eaves of your barn, catching the flies that the heat has hatched. You head towards the river. The shearing began yesterday with the washing. It is a chaotic, noisy affair. The sheep, heavy with a year's growth of fleece, are driven into the sheep wash, a dammed section of the stream where the water runs deep but slow. You remember the cold of the water from yesterday, standing waist deep, grabbing the struggling animals, scrubbing the worst of the mud and dung from their coats. The river ran brown with the dirt of the parish, but today the sheep are dry, fluffy, and indignant. They are gathered in the pens near the Lord's great barn. This is boonwork labor you owe to the Lord of the manor. Before you can shear your own few ewes, you must shear his flock. There are hundreds of them, a sea of white backs milling in the hurdled enclosure. You enter the barn. It is cool and shadowy, the air thick with the smell of sheepa musk that clings to the back of the throat. The floor has been swept clean and covered with a canvas sheet. You take your place. Your tool is a pair of shears. They are made of a single piece of iron, bent into a U shape at the handle, acting as a spring. With two triangular blades ground to a razor edge, they are simple, ancient, and effective. You test the spring tension, snick. The sound is sharp and metallic. A sheep is dragged out to you by a boy, perhaps your own son. It is a wether, a castrated male, heavy and strong. He stamps his hooves, but you know the hold. You tip him onto his rump, bracing his back against your legs. He goes still, his legs kicking uselessly in the air. This is the hypnotic position. Off balance, the sheep submits. You begin. You start at the belly. You open the wool with your fingers, finding the pink skin beneath. The wool is not white all the way through. The tips are gray with weather, but the base is creamy and rich with yolk grease. Your hands are instantly coated in this natural oil. Makes your skin soft, soaking into the calluses. Snick, snick. The rhythm takes you. You slide the lower blade of the shears along the skin, pushing the wool away. You must be careful. If you nip the skin, the flies will come. If you cut the wool halfway up the staple, the fiber, you ruin the fleece. It requires a steady hand and a fluid motion. You work up the flank. The fleece falls away in a single connected carpet.
Alice.
It is heavy, damp, and warm. The sheep breathes heavily against your knees. You turn him, maneuvering the animal with your legs so your hands are free to cut. You work down the back, the long prime wool of the saddle peeling away like the rind of a fruit. The noise in the barn is a drone of activity. The click of 20 pairs of shears, the bleating of the lambs separated from their mothers, the low murmur of men comparing the yield. Good weight this year, Thomas grunts from the next station. Grass was good, you reply, not breaking your rhythm. When the last cut is made near the tail, you let the sheep go. He scrambles up, looking strangely naked and skinny, pink-skinned and trembling slightly in the draft. He bounds away to find the flock. You are left with the fleece. You gather it up. It holds together a ghostly map of the animal it once covered. You carry it to the winding table. There, the women, including the Lord's Reeve's wife, are inspecting the wool. They roll it tightly, cut side out, and tie it with a twisted strand of the neck wool. This is the wealth of England. This bundle of greasy fiber will travel further than you ever will. It might go to the great weaving towns of Flanders or Italy. It might become a cloak for a merchant in Venice, or a habit for a monk in France. But here, it is just work. You return to the line. Another sheep. Tip, hold, snick. The hours pass. The sun climbs higher, heating the roof of the barn until the air inside shimmers. Sweat runs into your eyes, stinging with the salt and the sheep dip. Your back aches, burning knot between your shoulder blades from the constant stooping. Your hand cramps around the iron spring of the shears, but you do not stop. The flock must be shorn. By late afternoon, the pens are empty of woolly sheep and full of naked ones. The barn is piled high with the white gold. The bailiff marks the tally. You are done with the Lord's work. You walk home. You are covered in short white hairs that itch your neck. You smell like a ram. But the work is not quite over. You have your own 3 sheep to shear in your croft. You do this with more tenderness, perhaps, talking to the animals by name. Their wool is for you, for your wife's spindle, for your winter warmth. As the evening approaches, the mood shifts. The work of the day is heavy, but the night belongs to the season. It is St. John's Eve midsummer, and the sun is at its height. It is the longest day of the year. The darkness which plagued you in January has been defeated. The sun sets, but the light refuses to leave, lingering in a long violet twilight that stretches on towards midnight. You wash in the stream, scrubbing the grease from your arms. You put on a fresh tunic. You hear the sound of a pipe and tabor, a small drum coming from the village green. You walk with your family to the gathering. In the center of the green, a great pile of wood has been constructed, brushed from the woods. Old bones, hence bonfire and dried straw. The priest is there, but this is an older magic than the church, though the two have made a truce. He blesses the fire, sprinkling holy water on the wood. Then a torch is brought. Whoosh, the bonfire catches. The flames leap up, pale against the still bright sky, then growing more distinct as the blue deepens to indigo. The heat pushes the crowd back. This fire is not for warmth. It is for sympathy. You are lighting a fire on earth to encourage the fire in the sky, to help the sun stay strong as it begins its long, slow decline towards winter. The ale flows. It is a lighter brew than the winter ale, fresh and crisp. There is food, Jurcher food. Your wife has made a curd tart, a simple cheesecake sweetened with honey. There are baskets of early strawberries, small and intense, gathered from the woods. There is fresh cheese. The fast of the hungry gap is breaking. The village dances. It is a ring dance, everyone holding hands, moving clockwise, sunwise around the fire. The music is repetitive, a driving rhythm of drum and flute. You join in. Your boots kick up the dust. You look across the fire at the faces of your neighbors illuminated by the orange glow, laughing, flushed with heat and ale. Here is the miller, dancing with a lightness that belies his bulk. Here is the bailiff, stripped of his authority for the night, clapping his hands. Here is Agnes, her widow's veil laid aside. The young men begin the leaping. It is a contest of daring and superstition. You run at the fire and jump over the flames, or at least over the lower edges of the embers. Higher. The crowd shouts, "Jump higher for the flax! Jump higher for the corn!" The belief is simple. However high you jump, that is how high the crops will grow. You watch your son run. He leaps, his silhouette framed against the fire, legs tucking up. He lands safely on the other side, stumbling but laughing. Cheer goes up. The crops will be tall. You do not jump. Your jumping days are done. Your knees remember the plow too well. But you watch with a deep, vicarious thrill. As the fire burns down to a massive bed of glowing coals, the St. John Swort and other magical herbs are cast into the flames to ward off evil spirits. Now the smoke drifts over the fields, blessing the cattle and the crops. The night is short. In fact, it barely gets dark at all. To the north, the horizon retains a faint, ghostly glow of white, the simmer dim. It feels as though time has suspended itself. You walk back to your cottage in the gray light of early dawn. The birds are already starting their morning chorus, overlapping with the end of the night's revelry. You're tired, your body heavy from the shearing and the dancing. But it is a good tiredness. The wool is harvested. The sun is honored. The crops are growing. The cycle is at its zenith. You lie down on your bed. The air is warm and still. You can hear the distant bleating of the shorn sheep, confused by the cool air on their skin. You pull a thin linen sheet over you. You close your eyes, the image of the leaping flames still burning on the back of your eyelids. Summer is here. The earth is full. The wheel of the year has turned its final great spoke. It is August. We owed Mineth to your ancestors, the month of weeds. But to you, it is the month of the harvest. The world has lost the lush, wet green of early summer. The landscape has cured into a palette of golds, tans, and dusty whites. The heat is different now. It is not the growing heat of June, but the baking heat of an oven, designed to dry the grain until it rattles in the husk. You wake before the sun. The anxiety in the village is palpable. For the last week, every eye has been fixed on the western horizon, watching for the gray bruise of rain clouds. Ouch. Rain now would be a catastrophe. It would sprout the grain in the ear, ruining the flour, turning a year of labor into rot. But the sky is clear, a pale, steely blue that promises heat. You do not eat inside today. You grab your bread and cheese and head straight out. The hearth is cold. The life of the village has moved entirely outdoors. You walk to the great field. It is a sight that stops you in your tracks, no matter how many times you see it. The wheat, which you sowed in the mud of spring, now stands shoulder high. It is a solid wall of food, rippling in the slight breeze with a sound like whispering silk. This is the moment. The Lammas loaf mass has passed. First loaf has been baked and blessed. Now, the rest must be brought in. The entire village is here. There are no exemptions today. The craftsman has left his bench, the smith his forge. Even the elderly and the children are present. You take your place in the line. You are a reaper. Your tool is the sickle. It's unlike the scythe, which is used for grass. The sickle is a precision instrument for grain. It has a curved, serrated blade, like the jaw of a beast. The reeve stands at the edge of the field, holding his rod of office. He nods. The line moves forward. You step into the standing corn. You reach out with your left hand and grasp a bunch of stalks. You do not just grab, gather them, twisting slightly to create tension. With your right hand, you bring the sickle around. Grasp, slice, grasp, slice. The sound is a dry, rhythmic hiss. The serrated edge saws through the dry straw. You do not hack. You pull the blade through. You lay the cut corn gently on the ground behind you in a swath. It is back-breaking work. You're bent double, your nose filled with the smell of dry dust and straw. The wheat stalks are sharp. They scratch at your arms and face. The bearded bristles of the wheat gets everywhere, working its way under your tunic, itching and pricking, but you do not stop. You are part of a human machine. The line of reapers moves steadily across the furlong, eating the field. Behind you come the binders, mostly women and older children. Your wife is there. She gathers the swaths you have cut. She takes a handful of straw, twists it into a knot to make a bond, and ties the bundle together. Shev after shev is created. They are stacked into stooks, little tent-like structures of 4 or 6 shevs leaned against each other. This allows the air to circulate and dry the grain further before it is carted. By midday, the heat is ferocious. The sun hammers down on your neck. The field, usually a place of birdsong, is silent except for the hiss of the sickles and the grunt of effort. The birds have been displaced, fleeing the falling forest of stalks. You stop for noon meat lunch in the shadow of a stook. The ale jug is passed around. It is critical today. You sweat buckets. You must replace the fluid. The ale is weak and sour, but it cuts the dust in your throat like nectar. You wipe your face with a rough cloth, leaving streaks of mud where the dust has mixed with sweat. You look back at the work. Half the field is down. The landscape is being revealed again. The stubble looks like a shaved head, yellow and spiky. The afternoon stretches on. The rhythm becomes a trance. Your back screams in protest, but your muscles know the job. You are harvesting your survival. Every sheaf you cut is a loaf of bread for February. Every sheaf is a day you will not starve. As the sun begins to dip, turning the golden light to a rich amber, you reach the end of the field. The last patch of standing corn is small, an island in the sea of stubble. The reapers slow down. There is a superstition here. The spirit of the corn, John Barleycorn, has been retreating all day, hiding in the remaining stalks. To cut the last sheaf is to kill the spirit. No one wants to be the one to do it. So, the men gather. You all throw your sickles at the last clump together, or you cut it simultaneously. It falls. A cheer goes up. The spirit is caught, perhaps to be woven into a corn dolly and kept in the barn until next spring, to be plowed back into the earth, to be reborn. The harvest is done. But the work is not quite finished. Now comes the harvest home. The last cart is loaded. It is decorated with ribbons, with boughs of ash and oak, and with flowers. The villagers climb on top or walk alongside. The weariness of the day evaporates, replaced by a giddy, exhausted relief. You process back to the village. The mood is raucous. The lord of the manor, or at least his steward, is hosting the harvest supper in the great barn. This is the one night of the year when the social order is inverted, or at least softened. The Lord provides the feast. You enter the barn, now emptied of the sheep and swept clean. Trestle tables are groaned under the weight of food. There is fresh beef, a rarity. There is goose. There is the best white bread, made from the new flour. There is ale, strong and plentiful. You sit with your neighbors. You are dirty, covered in scratches, smelling of sweat and straw, but you feel like a king. You eat until you are full, a sensation that is rare enough to be memorable. You drink until the room spins gently. Music starts. The piper plays a jig. People dance, their heavy boots thumping on the wooden floor. You watch, smiling, too tired to join in, but happy to witness it. The fear of the winter is gone. The barn will be full. The loft will be groaning with grain. The hungry gap is bridged. You walk home late, the moon full and yellow, the harvest moon hanging low over the fields. The air is cooling rapidly. There is a crispness in it that was not there this morning. Autumn is knocking at the door. In the days that follow, the pace changes. The frantic energy of the harvest dissipates, replaced by the steady preparation for the dark. The fields are thrown open for gleaning. The poor, the elderly, and the children go out to gather the individual heads of wheat left behind by the reapers. It is God's law and the custom of the manor. The edges of the field belong to the poor. Then the livestock are let loose on the stubble. The sheep and cows graze the weeds and the leftover straw, manuring the ground as they go, preparing it for next year. The pigs are driven into the woods. It is pannage season. The oaks are dropping their acorns, the beeches their mast. The swineherd takes your pigs deep into the forest to fatten them up on the nuts. They will return in November, heavy and round, ready for the slaughter that will provide the salt pork for the winter. You return to your cottage. The cycle has closed. You stand in the center of your home. It is September now. The evenings are drawing in. The door is barred against the chill. You kneel at the hearth. You strike the flint against the steel. Click. Spark. The tinder catches. You blow gently. The flame jumps to the kindling. The fire is lit. The heart of the house is beating again. You look around. The room is the same as it was in Section 1. The soot hangs on the rafters. The ox chews in the byre. The smell of wood smoke and dried herbs fills the air. But something has changed. The loft above you is full of grain sacks. The onions are plated and hanging from the beams. The woodpile outside is stacked high. You sit on your three-legged stool. Your wife sits opposite you, mending a wool tunic for the winter. The children are asleep, their bellies full. Take your knife and a piece of wood. You begin to whittle, perhaps a new tooth for the rake, or a toy for the child. The rhythm of your hands matches the rhythm of the fire. You are tired, yes. Your body carries the scars of the year, the calluses, the aches, the weathered skin. But you are here. You have survived the cold, the hunger, the mud, and the heat. You have wrestled with the earth, and for another year, the earth has granted you a truce. Outside, the wind picks up, stripping the leaves from the trees, preparing the world for sleep. Inside, the fire crackles, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. You are a serf. You own nothing, yet you possess everything that matters in this moment. You have warmth, you have food, you have your people. You stare into the embers, seeing the same deep red glow that started your day in the deep winter. The story has no end, only a pause before the wheel turns again. But for tonight, the work is done. You are safe in the cozy warmth of the hearth.